Mr. Khan, the only way to hold aloft the World Cup trophy is to be the captain of the winning team. You can't try and snatch it away from Nawaz Sharif because you like it. He won it and you have to reconcile to that reality. That clearly is not happening. The big question, of course, is what may happen next. Now, I want to introduce three top guests on our broadcast this evening. We'll play out now 4 key scenarios. But before that, meet our guests. We've got Jyoti Malhotra, senior writer at India Today magazine, Razaul Lashkar from Mail Today, and Wajahat Khan, top journalist from Islamabad. Let me play out 4 scenarios that our desk has put together, and then we'll go across to our pundits and see which one is most likely. Let's take the first scenario. Army cuts Pakistan's Prime Minister down to size. A weakened Nawaz Sharif survives but loses all real authority. The likelihood of this is very high. Many would say this has already happened. Let's take scenario 2 on our screen now. Imran Khan succeed in cutting Nawaz Sharif to size and forcing him to quit. Nawaz Sharif deputes a proxy from the PMNL to take over. The likelihood of this is moderately high. Then let's come to the third scenario. Pakistan, in some fashion, manages to cobble a national government of unity. The army pressures Nawaz Sharif to step down, handpicks a technocrat and some politicians to take charge till the time there are fresh elections. The likelihood of this is slightly improbable. It's the least likely of the scenarios that we've mentioned so far. Then there is a full-fledged coup, like what happened in 1999 when General Musharraf took charge. General Raheel Sharif does a Musharraf takes charge, suspends democracy. The likelihood is improbable, and the reason that we say this is because Pakistan is way too much of a mess for the army to want to get involved in directly. Here are 4 scenarios. Let's go across to our pundits, and I'll start first with Wajahat Khan in Islamabad. Wajahat, those are the 4 scenarios. Everyone wondering where events in Pakistan are heading to next. What's your take, Wajahat?
My take is that depends on who you talk to. Everybody's gunning for their own scenario, Rahul. You talk to the government, they're saying that this was a conspiracy, this was a storm in a teacup, take away the TV cameras and boom, Khan and Qadri have got nothing more than the containers that they're holed up in. Talk to Khan and Qadri and they're saying that this is organic, this is real, this was in the coming, that their support might be dwindling on the ground, but that's because of bad supply chains and the government blocking them off with containers and cutting off the logistics and cutting off their oxygen and police brutality. Talk to the army and that's where things get interesting. Talk to the army and they say that, listen, yes, it's what you said, Rahul, as well. They say there's too much going on in Pakistan for us to be directly involved. And frankly, there's some sense to that. This government right now is a lot of things, but it's still been governing. This army has too many fronts to fight on. Balochistan is still an Achilles heel. There's an operation going on in Waziristan. The Indian border is not smooth, as you well know. And this army has tried really hard for the last few years, successfully to some extent, officially, if not unofficially, to move away from the crime scene that is Pakistani politics. And then talk to the dissidents, talk to social media, talk to people on the fringes, and the opinion is split. What we do know is that the political invective in this country is fiery. We do know that Pakistan hasn't been this polarized for years, Rahul. Depending on who you talk to, from the taxi driver to the waiter to a general to an air hostess, everybody's got an opinion about this. This revolution, however, I would say as a media professional, is being televised. But whether it's a TV revolution, a made-for-TV revolution, or the real thing, we don't know. And I have my doubts, seriously and personally, on the ground, especially after the dissent which came out of the PTI camp. And frankly, the silver lining here is that whoever is not going to be in the system, that is Pakistan's constitution, is going to lose. And it seems like Khan's losing. Whether the army likes the government or the government likes the army or not, they have been forced because of this crisis, interestingly, to draw ranks. That's my silver lining. Whether they like each other or not, whether they have baggage or not, they're moving closer together. That's a good sign in the long run.
As Indian viewers watch the dramatic scenes in Pakistan, memories are refreshed about what Arvind Kejriwal and Anna Hazare tried to do, Jyoti, because while nobody was jumping into our studios, but the fact that you had people out in the streets claiming that it was a big revolution happened during Kejriwal and Anna Hazare's movement as well. We played out 4 scenarios. Do you see parallels with Kejriwal, and which of these 4 scenarios do you believe is most probable?
I think that's a great metaphor, the comparison with Arvind Kejriwal. And look at where Arvind Kejriwal is today, nowhere at all. And I'm not talking about if and when elections are going to be held in Delhi, but today, Arvind Kejriwal is not a national leader like he was a year or so ago. Similarly, I think Imran Khan has completely lost the plot. If he believed that the elections were rigged in Pakistan last year, and this is over a year ago, then he should have gone on a dharna right then. Why do it 14 months later? Clearly, there is something very black in the lentils, or as we say in South Asia, dal mein kuch kala hai. And here the dal, I think, is very clear, but the kalapan in the dal, I believe, comes from the Pakistan army, which is using Imran Khan as well as Tayrul Qadri to fight the battle for them. And I think, and here I would like to say, Rahul, that my vote is with Nawaz Sharif today, and the reason it is because he's been here before. Remember that that Nawaz Sharif has been overthrown by the Pakistan army not once but twice. You talked about 1999 after the Lahore Bus Yatra, when then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee went to Pakistan and shook hands with the same Nawaz Sharif. What happens today in Pakistan is he is the Prime Minister of Pakistan tonight. He may be diminished, he may have lost significant authority, but he remains Prime Minister of Pakistan.
Okay.
And I think that's huge. I think that's, and we have to give him full credit for that. And of the 4 or 5 scenarios that you outlined, and one of the reasons that Wajahat in Pakistan talked about why the army, and you said yourself, why the army doesn't want to perhaps get its hands dirty today is because of all the mess in Balochistan, in Waziristan, the terrorism. But I think there is another reason, and that is the people of Pakistan. They are not going to tolerate another coup. And that's why I think the Pakistan army is somewhat weakened. So is Nawaz Sharif. That's bad news for Pakistan. However, Nawaz Sharif, the survivor, remains Prime Minister, and I think that's very good for
Razaul Lashkar reported from Pakistan for many years, and drawing on all that experience, Raza, I would like you to explain to our viewers what must be going through Nawaz Sharif's mind. He's won an election, he's been ousted in coups earlier. The man must really wonder if he's going to be third time unlucky, and what does he need to do to last out a full term in office?
Well, you know, lasting out a full term in office is very, very important, especially because Nawaz Sharif came to office in the first successful democratic transition last year. And I mean, when you once saw the victory last year, I mean, this is a man who got an absolute majority, which even he wasn't expecting. And he came to power in virtually the same sort of circumstances that the NDA came to power in India, on the back of a very corrupt, very poor performance by the previous PPP government. So it's all the more shocking to see the way in which he just seemed to have gone into a shell in the past few months. We've hardly ever seen Nawaz Sharif, and all of a sudden, when these two leaders, I mean, one a Canada-based cleric who doesn't even live in Pakistan throughout the year, and another person who's he actually won just 27 seats. He's got 34 seats in the parliament with proportional representation. So, and to see these two guys get together, 25,000 people, march into the heart of Islamabad and virtually bring things to a standstill, I mean, it's shocking. I fail to understand why Mr. Nawaz Sharif hasn't been more proactive in dealing with this situation. If anything, I mean, it's really exposed the fault lines. It's the people who follow Imran and Qadri are very, very dedicated. They are very, I mean, the kind of devotion they have to these leaders, it's exposed more fault lines and divisions.
No, but at no point in time have there been more than 1 lakh people out on the streets. Even with Kejriwal, it was the same. 30,000 Nawaz Sharif supporters, 20,000 Qadri supporters, and they bring a government that's won a majority to its knees. Is it only about people power, or are there forces in the background that are working to destabilize the Pakistan government. And in Pakistan, when you talk about forces, there's only the one almighty force, that is the Pakistan Army. The army is never off the national stage in Pakistan. It's frequently invisible, but it's always there, ever ready to assert itself. And like every other time in its spiraling history, as a political crisis threatens to tear the country apart with strife, it's the Pakistan Army and its Chief General Raheel Sharif on whom the onus lies. Will the general repeat history and assert his martial impulses, or will he allow Pakistan's tenuous democracy to crawl back on his watch? Either way, let there be no mistake about where Islamabad's real power lies. Shivarud files this story. General Raheel Sharif's elder brother Shabbir Sharif was killed in the 1971 war with India. Then a young officer, a certain Parvez Musharraf, walked up to Raheel Sharif and told him, "From now I am your elder brother." And that is a relationship that has lasted for all these decades. And it's also something that has shaped Raheel Sharif's view on India. And I want to go across to Jyoti on this, because the big concern in India is, what does the mess in Pakistan mean for us? With Kashmir elections round the corner, the Pakistani army, of course, would want to shift attention away from its own troubles by heating up things along the line of control. That's what's happened in the past. Do you see a more active, more hostility along the LOC and along the international border because of the mess in Pakistan, Jyoti?
Well, there is already considerable activity along the LOC, and we saw that in the run-up to the talks, the Foreign Secretary level talks, which of course never happened. And you're absolutely right. I think the mess in Pakistan has become, it's getting worse and worse. And if you see over the last year, since the elections took place inside Pakistan when Nawaz Sharif became Prime Minister, you've had the campaign in Waziristan, and the army has lost several hundred men in Waziristan, and it's unable to turn the campaign around. In 2009, when they went into the Badlands, which is into South Waziristan at the time, they lost a few thousand men at the time too, but they were able to win that battle. I think today's campaign has it's still in progress.
Okay.
And I think so it is in the interest of the Pakistan army to keep to stoke the fires, to keep the fires burning vis-a-vis India. But just to come back to Nawaz Sharif, my information is that when Nawaz Sharif came to Delhi in May earlier, a couple of months ago, to attend the swearing in of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the Pakistan army did not want him to come. And Nawaz Sharif basically overruled his own army to come to Delhi. So I think...
Is Nawaz Sharif paying for that sin, Wajahat Khan, of coming to India when the Pakistani army was not fully on board? And why does your Prime Minister look so weak? Here's a man who's won a full-fledged majority, and unlike Imran Khan, who managed to pick up just 34 seats, it seems as if Imran Khan won the 180 odd seats and it is Nawaz Sharif who won the 30 seats. Why does, despite having a majority, Nawaz Sharif look so weak, Wajahat?
Excellent question. We've all been wondering that, Rahul. I mean, he sort of wrote in almost like your Prime Minister Modi did, a bottom line, dollars and cents narrative. He had the Punjab, the mighty Punjab behind him, which was doing well, better than the other provinces. Lots of bridges, lots of trains, lots of overpasses and roads, huge majority, thumping majority, didn't need an ally really. Didn't have to fight for a hung coalition or anything of the sort. And then the self-isolation started, the imperiousness, not attending parliament, not giving interviews, not even having a Twitter account, not engaging the army on the right forums, not engaging civil society on the right forums, old school 90s style democratic traditions. Make someone an advisor, send someone across and as an ambassador, keep the foreign ministerial post for himself, distribute the top heavy posts in the government to cousins, friends, family, even daughters and sons-in-law. It was self-destructive, really. And things were still fine because then he got an awfully lucky chance, which barely anybody gets. He got to pick the Chief of Army Staff and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a rare occurrence together, and he made the call. He picked up guys of his own choice. And frankly, you've run this little report on Raheel Sharif, but he's a lot of things. But that Nishan-e-Haider of his brother weighs heavily upon him. And it weighs heavily upon him because from what I hear now and from what I've studied of the man, that he wanted a very apolitical role for himself. He wasn't groomed for this position. There were other favorites, really. And yet, Nawaz bungled it up. And now he has to face the ire of whatever the powers that be. But a storm in a teacup is really bothering him.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there. We're out of time, Wajahat. Very interesting analogies drawn by Wajahat about why Nawaz Sharif still feels so weak. And he must really wonder if the fault lies in his stars, because he's won a majority and yet he's on his knees virtually begging the army to allow him to continue. And this doesn't bode well for India at all. For the time being, Jyoti Malhotra, Razaul Lashkar, and also Wajahat Khan for joining us on Center Stage tonight. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed our broadcast this evening. I look forward to seeing you at 9:30 p.m. tomorrow. Till then, from all of us here on the Center Stage team, goodbye and good night.